It's that time of year again. Time for me to unveil my predictions for what will be nominated at this year's Academy Awards. Before I get into that, though, I do want to address the elephant in the room here. I'm recording this on January 17th. At the time of recording, the nominations are set to be released on January 23rd, about 6 days from now, but due to the ongoing wildfire situation in LA, there is no guarantee that that will remain the case. There is still a chance that they may have to be delayed again, and if that's the case, then so be it, because of course all of this award stuff is just for fun and people's livelihoods should always be prioritized first. But I'm recording the video now assuming that the nominations will indeed be released in 6 days as expected, and in the event of a delay, I will just release the video a little later than I was expecting. But of course, again, people's safety comes first and foremost. If there must be another delay, then so be it, absolutely. Now that that has been addressed, I'm going to go through my predictions in each category. We have all the precursors now. We have the Golden Globe winners. We have the BAFTA nominations, all the major guilds. So I feel pretty confident in narrowing down my final choices in each category. So let's begin with Best Picture. So for Best Picture, I have Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, Nickel Boys, A Real Pain, The Substance, and Wicked. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory. I think about 8 of these are locks, and then the 2 kind of question marks, I suppose, are A Real Pain and Nickel Boys. I know a lot of people took A Real Pain out of their predictions after it missed Critics' Choice, but it just doesn't feel right to me. Like, Kieran Culkin being the supporting actor frontrunner, I feel like that alone gives it enough strength to put it in the top 10. It would just be really weird if it didn't make it with that in mind. And then Nickel Boys admittedly has had not the most inspiring precursor run, but neither did The Tree of Life in 2011, and the Academy still went for that, so I have faith. I'm not giving up on that movie. I think, I would be more confident in it if it had made the PGA lineup like Zone of Interest last year, but PGA rarely goes 10 for 10 with the Oscars anyway. There's usually at least one movie that gets in there that isn't in the Oscar lineup. So I'm betting on September 5th being swapped out for Nickel Boys in the final results. Please, Academy, don't do this movie dirty. It's one of the best movies of the year. Come on. You gotta do it. And otherwise, again, it's pretty self-explanatory. I think these movies have all gotten in exactly where they need to, and I would be pretty surprised to see any of them miss. Best Director. Jacques Audiard, Emilia Perez, Sean Baker, Anora, Edward Berger, Conclave, Brady Corbet, The Brutalist, Coralie Fargeat, The Substance. This is where I should mention that I'm very much not in the pro-Emilia Perez camp this award season. I think that movie is genuinely dreadful. It's horribly regressive and ignorant with pretty much every theme that it tries to tackle, from trans identity to Mexican identity to just everything. And there's like one good song in it. It's poorly structured. The entire final act feels like an afterthought. I just think it's terrible, and it would be the worst Best Picture winner we've had since Crash if it somehow pulled that off, which, God help us, it actually might. All of which is to say, I am predicting it to get the most nominations out of any film this year, and as you can imagine, I'm thrilled about that. This season may actually kill me. But yeah, Corbet, Baker, Audiard, I'd rank them as like the top 3. Berger is potentially snubbable, but I wouldn't necessarily bet on it. Fargeat, I just think that movie is such a distinct directorial vision that I don't see how she doesn't get nominated if the film is up for Best Picture. And yeah, that's just kind of my thought process. I have unfortunately given up hope for Denis Villeneuve. I think that movie is definitely looking like it's going to get the Two Towers Way of Water treatment. But, there's always Dune Messiah. I'd love to see Ramel Ross get in for Nickel Boys. I'm trying not to get my hopes up too much, but, hope springs eternal. James Mangold got in at DGA, but I don't expect that to repeat here. And if I had my way, Jane Schoenbrunn would be winning for I Saw the TV Glow, but they're not even going to get nominated, so that's just wishful thinking. Best Actor. Adrian Brody, The Brutalist, Timothée Chalamet, A Complete Unknown, Daniel Craig, Queer, Colman Domingo, Sing Sing, Ralph Fiennes, Conclave. So Brody, Chalamet, Domingo, Fiennes, I think they're pretty much locked. Domingo is maybe a little bit vulnerable if Sing Sing really doesn't get into Best Picture. Like, if he doesn't get in, then it's getting goose-egged. It's just no nominations, which hopefully it won't come to, because he's really good in it, and he deserves the nomination. But yeah, I would rank those four as being safe. And then the fifth slot is a battle between Daniel Craig for Queer, Sebastian Stan for The Apprentice or A Different Man, and bizarrely enough, Hugh Grant for Heretic. He has actually managed to solidify himself as a contender, which I definitely wouldn't have seen coming. But yeah, I'm going with Craig because even though he missed BAFTA, which was weird given that he is British, I just can't get past the fact that he got in at SAG. Like, for SAG to recognize a movie like Queer, that just feels too significant. It feels like a real show of strength for him, and perhaps an indication that maybe Sebastian Stan is splitting votes for his two movies. That maybe some people don't want to recognize him for The Apprentice because of the orange elephant in the Oval Office, and they're maybe voting for him in A Different Man, but some people want to stick it to Trump, so they're voting for him in The Apprentice, and he's, just splitting votes. That could very well be what's killing him here, and that might just give Craig the path to sneak into the five. Best Actress: Pamela Anderson, The Last Showgirl; Carla Sofia Gascon, Emilia Perez; Mikey Madison, Anora; Demi Moore, The Substance; and Fernando Torres, I'm Still Here. Moore, Madison, and Gascon are pretty self-explanatory. They've shown up pretty much everywhere. Moore has more or less solidified herself as the frontrunner with her Golden Globe speech. Pamela Anderson has a very strong narrative around her. I mean, I haven't seen the film, and I'm sure she's very good in it, but obviously the comeback narrative is a huge driving force behind the surge that she's been having recently. People are rooting for her. It's easy for them to root for her. And then Fernando Torres, I think, also has gotten a huge boost from the Golden Globes. Like, she was already seen as a fringe contender before she won, but after she won, it feels like there's been a huge uptick in people watching that movie and being blown away by her performance. So I think that's really going to help her in the final stretch. You may have noticed the absence of Cynthia Erivo in my five, and I promise you that's not me being biased just because I wasn't a fan of the movie. I think she's terrific in it, and I wouldn't mind seeing her nominated. But I just can't shake the feeling that she's going to be the contender that hits every precursor and then gets snubbed at the last minute. Like, there's usually one every year. Lady Gaga in House of Gucci, Viola Davis in The Woman King, Margot Robbie in Barbie, who is kind of the most perfect comparison for Erivo. The lead in the big mainstream blockbuster. So yeah, it's possible there won't be one this year, but if there is one, I think it's going to be Cynthia Erivo, especially since, they're going to have the opportunity to nominate her again next year if part 2 is just as successful. But we'll have to see. The biggest twist at this point would be if Angelina Jolie actually managed to make it into the 5 after the season that she's had. I don't know how likely that is, but crazier things have happened. Like Penelope Cruz in Parallel Mothers getting in with practically no precursor support. Supporting actor: Yura Borisov, Anora; Kieran Culkin, A Real Pain; Edward Norton, A Complete Unknown; Guy Pearce, The Brutalist; and Jeremy Strong, The Apprentice. Now, Guy Pearce did miss at SAG, which seemed pretty big, but I do not see the Oscars going for Jonathan Bailey over him. I feel like switch Bailey out for Pearce from the SAG 5, and that's your lineup. Borisov, at the start of the season, I thought he was just going to be a fun surprise on Oscar nomination morning at best, but no, he's really proven himself to be a strong contender. He's shown up at all the precursors. Really been cool to see for such an understated performance. Kieran Culkin, still the frontrunner, especially with Pearce missing SAG. That just clears the path even more for Kieran Culkin. Edward Norton, a lot of people seem to like him in the movie, and he's, again, consistently shown up everywhere he needs to. I don't really see a scenario where he gets snubbed at this point. And Jeremy Strong, I mean, he deserves to be nominated. He's fantastic in the movie. He is potentially vulnerable because it's unclear exactly how much fear of Trump is going to impact that movie's chances. But in a relatively weak field and with Denzel Washington looking increasingly unlikely for Gladiator 2, I think he sneaks into the five. Supporting actress: Selena Gomez, Emilia Perez, Ariana Grande, Wicked, Margaret Qualley, The Substance, Isabella Rossellini, Conclave, and Zoe Saldana, Emilia Perez. This category is a bit chaotic this year. Saldana and Grande have been really the only two constants. It's very much looking like a two-horse race between them. Gomez has made a respectable showing. She got in at BAFTA and the Golden Globes, missed at Critics' Choice and SAG, but still looking fairly strong if the movie does indeed get like a fuck ton of nominations. Rossellini has really surpassed expectations. I mean, she's in the movie for like 2 minutes tops, but she keeps getting nominated. It really does look like people are just eager to anoint her as an Oscar nominee. And then Qualley is admittedly on shaky ground because she did just miss SAG and BAFTA, which is not a great combination to miss. But I don't know, I just feel like she's such a huge part of the movie that it's difficult for me to imagine that it would get into picture, director, actress, and screenplay, and she would be the one who's left behind. I don't know, maybe she's Mila Kunis in Black Swan, but my gut is just telling me that she's going to make it in, and hopefully I will be proven right on that. There's also the very strong possibility for Jamie Lee Curtis in The Last Showgirl, which if that happens, she will just have proved herself as an incredible awards campaigner between managing to go from not even being seen as a contender for Everything Everywhere All at Once to actually winning. And then in this case, going from someone who, again, wasn't really in the conversation to suddenly showing up at SAG, BAFTA, and maybe Oscar. I have her at number 6 for now, though. I'm sticking with my predicted 5 for now. Maybe it's unwise to not have Curtis in there, but it's a risk I'm going to have to take. Original screenplay: Anora, The Brutalist, Challengers, A Real Pain, The Substance. This is another of those categories where 4 of them are basically locked and the 5th slot is a question mark. I'm going with Challengers, although I definitely think it's a battle between that and September 5th. I would really love to see Challengers recognized above the line, so rooting for that. And also because I just love the idea of the potion seller guy becoming an Academy Award nominated screenwriter. That would just be amazing. Adapted screenplay: Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, Nickel Boys, Sing Sing. I did debate whether it was the right move to have Nickel Boys in when I've moved it out of Best Picture, but I'm keeping it in for now. The main alternative I can think of is A Complete Unknown, but I don't know, it's just they don't really do music biopics in screenplay these days. Like, Elvis didn't get in, Bohemian Rhapsody didn't get in. I just don't know if that's a genre that the writer's branch is maybe that fond of. So I don't know, I'm not fully convinced that that's going to make it in at this point. There's also Wicked, but, again, similar with music biopics, musicals rarely get into screenplay, so am I going to predict 2 in the same year? I don't know. It feels weird to me. Animated feature: Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul, The Wild Robot. I really don't need to justify this much. These are like the 5 contenders. Moana 2, maybe, but does anyone even remember that movie exists and it came out 3 weeks ago? It's going to be these 5. It's an easy category. I don't foresee any surprises here. Moving on. Documentary feature: Black Box Diaries, Daughters, No Other Land, Sugarcane, and Will and Harper. This category is very often unpredictable, so my strategy is always just play it safe, predict the big ones, and expect to be surprised. I suppose Will and Harper is vulnerable because they do have a history of not really going for the celeb docs, but I don't know, that one did make quite a big splash, so it could be the exception. It would be fun to see Will Ferrell get an Oscar nomination. International feature. Emilia Perez, I'm Still Here, Kneecap, The Seed of the Sacred Fig, Vermiglio. I'm pretty confident in that top four. Obviously, Kneecap is partly me rooting for my own country, but also it has a really good chance. I mean, it's done really well with the BAFTA nominations. It's in the shortlist for original song, which is a really good sign. I think that indicates that there is a lot of love for it within the Academy. And, it's a crowd-pleasing enough movie. Like, it's very easy to get on board with. And then Vermiglio is just kind of, that fifth slot, I think, is between Vermiglio, Universal Language, and Girl with the Needle. All of them make some degree of sense to me. Girl with the Needle maybe a little bit more so than Universal Language, but I just went with Vermiglio by default. It's also possible that they could do Flow, which would be a really good sign for that movie in terms of winning animated feature, but I don't know if I'm ready to take that leap. Score. The Brutalist, Challengers, Conclave, Emilia Perez, The Wild Robot. I feel almost foolish for having such faith in the music branch to go for Challengers after they snubbed Spider-Verse, Zone of Interest, and Boy and the Heron last year for fucking Indiana Jones. But, there isn't really an Indiana Jones equivalent this year that I can think of, so maybe I'm allowed to be more optimistic that they'll actually go with the really cool picks. I mean, Challengers winning the Golden Globe was a really good sign, right? Yeah, I'm allowing myself to have hope here. The Brutalist is probably winning. Conclave may give it a run for its money. Obviously, Dune has been declared ineligible, which doesn't really make sense to me because, again, Indiana Jones, how much of that was original, but whatever. Emilia Perez, I could not hum a single track from that score, but it keeps getting nominated, so whatever. And then The Wild Robot, which I still haven't seen, actually. I do still have to watch that movie. I meant to see it when it came out, but I never got around to it. But everyone I know who has seen it has said that the score is really lovely, so I'm trusting their judgment. Yeah, this seems like a pretty solid 5 to me. The only other one I can maybe think of is Nosferatu, but I don't know how likely that is. Original song. El Mal, Emilia Perez, The Journey, The 6888, Kiss the Sky, The Wild Robot, Mi Camino, Emilia Perez, and Tell Me It's You, Mufasa the Lion King. Emilia Perez is going to get double nominated here as well, probably. Fuck my life. Tell Me It's You, I think Lin-Manuel Miranda is a big enough name that they'll go for him, even though people haven't really been talking much about that soundtrack outside of that one song about having a brother. Kiss the Sky, I think if they're going for Wild Robot in score, then they're going to go for it in song as well. And then The Journey will be the annual Diane Warren nomination for a movie nobody's heard of. If she could get nominated for the Cheetos movie, she's getting nominated for this one. I don't know what kind of dirt that she has on the Academy's music branch, but clearly it's not strong enough to ever get her the win. Cinematography. The Brutalist, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, Nickel Boys. It is insane that I am even in a position where I have to be worried about Nickel Boys getting snubbed, but somehow I am. I am begging you guys, Academy, please don't be stupid. Recognize this movie's cinematography. It deserves it. I really don't care what else happens in this category as long as Nickel Boys gets nominated. I do think Emilia Perez might be vulnerable here because it didn't get nominated in a field of 7 at the American Society of Cinematographers, but I am not going to get my hopes up for too many snubs. There's a sentence I don't have to say very often. Look what you have reduced me to, Emilia Perez. Production design. The Brutalist, Dune Part 2, Gladiator 2, Nosferatu, Wicked. Wicked's probably going to win. Dune will be a close second because the first movie did win. The Brutalist is literally about an architect. Nosferatu, I mean, just look at it. It has easily some of the best production design of the entire year, so I think just on merit alone, it earns a spot in the top 5. And then Gladiator 2 has fallen off a little bit this season. It does just kind of seem like there isn't really any enthusiasm for that movie. But like, they built a fucking Colosseum set. That has to count for something, right? Costume design. Dune Part 2, Furiosa, Gladiator 2, Maria, Wicked. Wicked feels like a lock. Dune, I think, has a pretty good chance because there are enough costumes in it that are distinct even from the ones we saw in the first movie that it'll still feel like it has something new to offer. It won't just feel like more of the same. Maria, I think, can still get in even without Jolie. Gladiator 2 had pretty insane costumes, like just look at the fits Denzel was rocking. And then Furiosa is a bit of a no guts, no glory pick. I just find it really hard to believe, even with the weak box office, that that movie will be just completely shut out of the tech categories, considering how Fury Road cleaned them up. You know, I think if it's going to be recognized anywhere, it's going to be in costumes. Makeup and hairstyling. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Dune Part 2, Nosferatu, The Substance, Wicked. I mean, this is just kind of going to be The Substance award. I feel like everyone else can just go home. As soon as I saw that movie, I was like, yeah, the race is over. That last 30 minutes, are you kidding me? But there's still, you know, some good work to be recognized elsewhere here. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. The first movie won over 30 years ago, and I expect this one to receive a nomination as well. Dune obviously has the crazy makeup work on Stellan Skarsgård. Wicked has the green makeup. Nosferatu transforms Bill Skarsgård into something completely unrecognizable. Actually, I'm just realizing now that two of my predicted nominees showcase physical transformation for the Skarsgård family, so that's pretty funny. To me, anyway. Visual effects. Dune Part 2, Gladiator 2, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Mufasa the Lion King, and Wicked. Better Man, maybe I should be predicting, but there's just this little voice in my head that's going like, are they really gonna nominate two movies that are primarily showcasing realistic CGI apes? And between the two of them, I just feel like Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes has the better chance because that movie just has, that franchise just has a longer history with the Academy. And also, Better Man just has not been very widely seen from the looks of it. Yeah, I don't think there's really much room elsewhere. I mean, Alien Romulus maybe could sneak in. Beetlejuice would be a pretty cool nomination for practical effects, but I don't know how likely that is. I think the ceiling for that movie is makeup. So yeah, with the caveat that Better Man could make it in, I'm going with this 5. Editing. Anora, Challengers, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez. Bit of a chaotic category this year. There's a few different directions I could see this lineup going in, but I've settled on this one because The Brutalist missing the BAFTA long list was a worrying sign. The Substance weirdly hasn't been picking up the heat that I would have expected it to in this category once it became a Best Picture player. Like, really, you could make a convincing case for that movie to win, but it just hasn't really been showing up anywhere. Yeah, honestly, like, the only thing I'm confident about right now with editing is that Dune is probably going to win just because it's the blockbuster with the flashiest editing. Sound. Blitz, A Complete Unknown, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, Wicked. Blitz may have disappeared from the awards conversation, but it's a movie about bombs being dropped, so it's still a safe bet for sound. A Complete Unknown, Emilia Perez, and Wicked are all music adjacent, and in Emilia Perez's case, it's music mixed with like shootouts and shit, so that's pretty self-explanatory. And then Dune, these movies just have really striking, memorable sound design, and the first movie won for Best Sound, so it's kind of a given, really. So those are my predictions for what will be nominated at the Oscars this year. We will hopefully have the results on Thursday. And then closer to the ceremony, you can expect my predictions for what is going to win. Thank you.